You are a liar. In your dreams, I like a real man. I'm innocent.
Was this really just a tiny slip-up? Or was it something way darker than that? Think about that for a second, because when the glass partition in that Weatherfield courtroom finally separated Megan Walsh from the world she'd been manipulating, we weren't just seeing a character leave. We were watching a predator's carefully built house of cards just absolutely cave in. But here's the real question. Did justice actually win? Or did Megan just run out of lies to tell? The 5-year sentence for Megan Walsh has sent huge shockwaves through the Coronation Street fandom. Today, we're going to dive really deep into the psychological mess she left behind, those hidden clues in Beth Nixon's acting, and whether 5 years in a cell is even close to enough for what she did. Megan Walsh didn't just show up on the cobbles. She basically slithered into a spot where people trusted her. She used her job as a teacher to weaponize the fact that a teenager like Will Driscoll was vulnerable. From the outside, she looked like the perfect professional. She was the mentor who seemed to care, just a little bit too much. But under that blonde hair was a cold, calculating person who knew exactly how to isolate her target. I mean, think about the ego it takes to believe you can groom a student in a tiny community like Weatherfield and actually get away with it. That's the real starting point for understanding her. Why Will? And why then? Well, if you look at it, predators like Megan don't just pick people at random. They look for the cracks in a family. Will wasn't just a student to her. He was a project she could mold. It was her way of having this weird God complex over a young life. This wasn't some romance that went off the rails. It was a planned invasion of a child's boundaries, all wrapped up to look like emotional support. The scary thing is that Megan didn't even want Will. She wanted the control over Will. We see the truth in that moment. She dumps the lover's guide to Paris in the bin the second he's gone. That right there is the ultimate tell. It proves that the love she talked about was just a script she was getting bored of reading. To her, Will was just an object. He was like a piece of luggage she planned to leave at the station while she made her own getaway. Honestly, that scene with the Paris guide is the most important part of the whole story. It tells us more than the trial ever could. It strips away any star-crossed lover's fantasy that some people might have had. It was cold, and it proved she had absolutely no empathy at all. When the trial started, we saw 2 different Megans. There was the one in the dock who looked like butter would melt, and then there was the one who finally shattered when the verdict came in. That's a huge credit to Beth Nixon's acting, but it's also a terrifying look at how predators use their status to hide from consequences. Beth herself said that standing in that dock felt really scary and immersive. But for the character of Megan, that fear wasn't about being sorry. It was the fear of a hunter realizing they've become the prey. Inside her head, she was probably bouncing between believing her own lies and being furious that her magic over the Driscoll family had finally stopped working. If you look at it differently, those courtroom scenes weren't just a legal battle. They were Megan's final performance. She wore that blonde hair like a costume for innocence. She used her composed personality as a weapon against the Driscolls, who were understandably a mess of raw emotion. She figured if she stayed the calm professional while they looked hysterical, she could trick the jury. She was gambling on people's prejudices, and the crazy thing is, she almost WO and SO what finally broke her. It wasn't just the evidence. It was the psychological pressure from the Battersby sisters. When Leanne, Toya, and Eva confronted her and basically kidnapped her, they forced Megan out of her safe little bubble. They ripped away her professional shield and showed her for what she really was, a cornered liar. That fight in the back of the Rovers was like a mini-play that showed the cracks Megan couldn't cover up anymore. When the jury said guilty, the mask didn't just slip, it completely burned off. The screaming, the banging on the glass, and the way she begged her mother, Janine, to help her. That's exactly how a narcissist acts when their ego collapses. She wasn't crying for Will. She was crying because the world stopped believing she was the hero of her own story. The transition Beth Nixon went through as an actor is pretty fascinating, too. She's been really open about how much she cried on her last day. It shows she had a real emotional bond with the Coronation Street crew, which is ironic because Megan couldn't form a real bond with anyone. Did you notice how fast Beth went back to her natural brunette hair? To me, that's more than just a new look. It's like she needed to wash the character off of her. Being Megan for 9 months, with all those icky storylines, clearly weighed on her. By changing her hair immediately, she was taking her identity back from a character she personally found repulsive. It's really rare for an actor to be so good at playing a villain while being so loved by the rest of the cast. Jude Riordan's tribute to her shows that the set was full of respect, even when they were filming these really dark scenes. This contrast is so important. To play a predator well, you have to be able to step out of that darkness once the cameras stop rolling. Beth's work with Barnardo's also shows that this wasn't just soap drama. It was about education. By making sure Megan didn't just get killed off but actually faced a boring prison cell, the writers made a huge point about accountability. They didn't give her a dramatic ending that would make her a legend. They gave her a prison number, which is exactly what a predator deserves, but we also have to talk about the mess she left behind. The justice for Megan isn't just about her being locked up. It's about the long, hard road to recovery for the people she hurt. When Megan called Will a liar in court, she was trying one last act of grooming. She was trying to make him doubt himself, to make him feel like he was the one responsible for her life being ruined. That's classic predator behavior, trying to dump the guilt onto the victim. Will's journey isn't over just because she's gone. He has to take apart every single lie she ever told him, and then there's the fallout for everyone else. The truth teller subplot with Daniel Osborne and Jodie Ramsey shows how Megan's crimes created a hole that other villains could use. By accusing Daniel of knowing about the relationship, Jodie used the neighborhood's fear to target an innocent man. This shows how grooming stories spread like a disease. They destroy the basic trust people have in each other. Daniel became another victim of Megan's shadow, which proves her exit doesn't mean her influence is gone. Beth Nixon has actually teased that she'd love to come back for prison scenes, maybe even crossing over with Lou Michaelis. That brings up a huge question about what happens next. How would someone like Megan even survive in prison? Beth thinks she would either be tortured by losing her status, or she would become a top dog manipulator. Personally, I think Megan in prison is even scarier. Without a professional mask to wear, we'd see the real, raw predator. Is she redeemable? Beth struggled with that, too. She said as an actor she looks for good qualities, but the reality is that Megan is just a troubled, broken, insecure person who made choices that can't be forgiven. In my opinion, trying to give Megan Walsh a redemption arc would be an insult to real victims. Some characters aren't meant to be fixed, they're meant to be a warning. While 5 years might feel like a short time for such a horrible crime, it actually reflects the real legal system, which is both annoying and accurate. It makes us face the fact that justice isn't always perfect. The real punishment is that she lost her career, her name, and the ability to ever be trusted again. The tension on the cobbles hasn't just gone away. If anything, this whole thing has opened up new wounds. We have Will trying to deal with his trauma, the Driscolls trying to fix their family, and that lingering feeling that Megan could come back. I'm actually predicting we haven't seen the last of her. That podcast interview basically paved the way for a prison visit storyline. Whether it's Will looking for closure or someone else meeting her inside, her exit feels more like a see you later. The real drama will happen when she eventually gets out, because someone like Megan doesn't just stop. They just find better ways to hide. And what about her mom, Janine? She had to watch her daughter be led away in total disgrace. We haven't really seen the show explore what happens to a parent when they realize their kid is a monster. Janine's silence in that courtroom was so loud. I think her future on the street is going to be haunted by the guilt of what she didn't see. Beth Nixon's exit is the end of one of the most uncomfortable but necessary stories the show has done. She didn't just play a baddie. She showed us a very real, very dark part of our world. By making us hate Megan so much, she actually did an incredible job as an actor. She's nominated for Best Villain, and honestly, if she doesn't win, that would be a crime in itself. Most villains on the street use a weapon, but Megan used a smile and a lesson plan. That is so much more terrifying. In the end, the justice served to Megan was really for us, the viewers who have been yelling at our TVs for months. It was a bit of that soap justice we all want, where the bad person doesn't just walk away, they actually lose everything. Weatherfield is a bit safer now, But the shadows Megan left behind are going to be there for a long time to SO. What do you think? Is 5 years a fair sentence for what she did? Or should the show have gone for something much longer? And if she does come back for prison scenes, do you want to see her get what's coming to her from other inmates? Or do you think she'll somehow find a way to run the place? This whole exit was such an emotional mess, and the fact that Beth Nixon was crying on her last day just shows how much heart it takes to play someone who is none. If you loved this deep dive into the mind of Megan Walsh, make sure you hit that subscribe button for more Coronation Street talk. Give the video a like if you were cheering when she was found guilty, and definitely drop a comment below with your theories on what's next for Will. I'll see you in the next video, and just remember, on those cobbles, the truth always finds a way out eventually. Was this really just a simple mistake, or was it something way deeper and darker than we first thought? Think about it for a second, because when that glass partition in the Weatherfield dock finally separated Megan Walsh from everyone else, we weren't just watching a character leave. We were watching the total collapse of a predator's house of cards. But did justice really win here, or did Megan just run out of lies to tell? The sentencing of Megan Walsh has sent huge shockwaves through the Coronation Street fandom, and today, we're diving deep into the psychological mess she left behind. We need to look at the hidden clues in Beth Nixon's acting and ask the big question: is 5 years in a cell actually enough for the damage she caused? Megan Walsh didn't just walk onto the cobbles. She basically slithered into a position where people felt they could trust her. She used her job as a teacher to weaponize the fact that a teenager like Will Driscoll was vulnerable. From the outside, she looked like the perfect professional, didn't she? She was the mentor who seemed to care just a little bit too much. But under that blonde hair was a cold, calculating person who knew exactly how to isolate her target. I mean, think about the ego it takes to believe you can groom a student in a tight-knit place like Weatherfield and actually get away with it. That's where we have to start our analysis. Why Will? And why then? Well, if you look at how predators like Megan work, they don't just pick people at random. They look for the cracks in a family structure. Will wasn't just a student to her. He was a project she could mold. It was her way of having a god complex over a young life. This wasn't some romance that just went wrong. It was a strategic invasion of a child's boundaries disguised as emotional support. And that's the truly chilling part. The funny thing is, Megan didn't even want Will. She wanted the power over him. Do you remember the moment she dumped the lover's guide to Paris in the bin the second he was out of sight? That right there is the ultimate psychological tell. It proves that the love she was preaching was nothing more than a script she was getting bored of reading. To her, Will was just an object, a piece of luggage she intended to leave at the station while she made her own escape. Honestly, in my opinion, that scene in the bin is the most important part of the whole storyline. It's way more revealing than the trial itself. It strips away any star-crossed lover's delusion that some viewers might have held. It was cold, it was clinical, and it proved she had zero capacity for empathy. When the trial finally started, we saw two different Megans. There was the one in the dock looking like butter wouldn't melt, and then there was the one who finally shattered when the verdict came in. This duality is a huge credit to Beth Nixon's acting, but it's also a terrifying look at how predators use their social status to hide. Beth Nixon herself admitted that standing in that dock felt really scary and immersive. She said it felt like being on stage or part of an immersive show. But for the character of Megan, that fear wasn't about being sorry. It was the fear of a hunter realizing they've become the prey. Inside her head, she was probably bouncing between believing her own lies and being furious that her magic over the Driscoll family had finally stopped working. If we look at it differently, those courtroom scenes weren't just a legal battle. They were Megan's final performance. She wore that blonde hair like a costume of innocence. She used her composed nature as a weapon against the Driscolls, who were understandably a messy, emotional wreck. She thought if she stayed the calm professional while they looked hysterical, she could win over the jury. She was gambling on the prejudices of the legal system, and the scary part is, she almost won. What finally broke her, though? It wasn't just the evidence. It was the psychological pressure applied by the Battersby sisters. When Leanne, Toya, and Eva confronted her, and even briefly kidnapped her, they forced Megan out of her controlled environment. They stripped away her professional shield and showed her exactly what she was, a cornered liar. That confrontation in the back of the Rovers was like a mini-play that exposed the cracks Megan couldn't fill with more lies. When the jury said guilty, the mask didn't just slip, it was incinerated. The screaming, the banging on the glass, and the way she begged her mother, Janine, were the actions of a narcissist experiencing an ego collapse. She wasn't sorry for what she did to Will. She was just furious that the world had stopped believing she was the hero of her own story. Watching her lose it like that was probably the most satisfying thing we've seen on the cobbles in a long time, but it also showed just how dangerous she really is when she's not in control. There's also this huge distance between Beth Nixon and the monster she played. Beth has been so open about how much she cried on her last day. It shows she had a deep emotional connection to the cast, which is the exact opposite of Megan, who couldn't form a real bond with anyone. Did you notice how fast Beth went back to her natural brunette hair? To me, that's more than just a style choice. It's like she needed to wash the character off her. Being Megan for 9 months, with the blonde hair and the icky storylines, clearly took a toll on the actress. By changing her hair immediately, she was reclaiming her identity from a character that even she found repulsive. It's actually pretty rare for an actor to play a villain so well while staying so loved by the rest of the cast. Jude Riordan's tribute to her proves that the atmosphere on set was one of professional respect, even when they were filming scenes of torment. This contrast is vital. To play a predator effectively, you have to be able to step out of that darkness once the cameras stop. Beth's work with Barnardo's also highlights that this wasn't just soap drama, it was meant to be social education. By making sure Megan didn't just get killed off, but instead faced a prison cell, the writers made a powerful statement about accountability. They didn't give her a dramatic death that would turn her into some kind of dark legend. They gave her a prison number and a cell, which is exactly what a predator deserves. But what about the wreckage she left behind? The justice of Megan Walsh isn't just about her being behind bars. It's about the long road to recovery for the people she manipulated. When Megan called Will a liar in open court, she was trying one final act of grooming. She was trying to plant a seed of doubt in his mind, trying to make him feel responsible for her downfall. This is classic predator behavior, shifting the burden of guilt onto the victim. Will's journey isn't over just because she's in prison. He now has to take apart every single lie she ever told him, and it's not just Will. The truth teller subplot involving Daniel Osborne and Jody Ramsey shows how Megan's crimes created a vacuum that other villains could fill. By accusing Daniel of knowing about the relationship, Jody used the community's fear of Megan to target an innocent man. This shows the contagion of a grooming storyline. It destroys the basic trust of a whole neighborhood. Daniel Osborne became a secondary victim of Megan's shadow, proving that her exit doesn't mean her influence is gone. I have a feeling we haven't seen the last of her, though. Beth Nixon has already teased that she would love to return for prison scenes, maybe even crossing over with Lou Michaelis. This raises a massive question about the future of the character. How would Megan Walsh even cope in prison? Beth thinks she would either be tortured by the loss of her status or she would thrive as a top-dog manipulator. In my view, Megan in prison would be even more dangerous than Megan in a classroom. Without the professional mask to maintain, we would see the raw, unfiltered predator. Is she redeemable? Beth Nixon struggled with this question. She noted that while she as an actor looks for redeemable qualities, the reality is that Megan is a troubled, broken, insecure person who has made inexcusable choices. To me, any attempt at a redemption arc for Megan Walsh would be an insult to victims. Some characters are meant to be a warning, not a project for reform. The 5-year sentence might feel short, but it mirrors the real-world legal system in a way that is both frustrating and accurate. It forces us to confront the fact that justice is often imperfect. The real sentence is that she's lost her career, her reputation, and her ability to ever be trusted again. The tension in Weatherfield hasn't just gone away with her sentencing. If anything, it's opened up new wounds. Weavell trying to process his trauma, the Driscoll family trying to rebuild, and the lingering threat of Megan's return. I am predicting that we haven't seen the last of her. The Soap Scoop podcast interview practically laid the groundwork for a prison visit storyline. Whether it's Will seeking closure or a new character encountering her behind bars, Megan's exit feels more like a pause. The real conflict will come when she is eventually released, because a predator like Megan doesn't just stop. They just find new ways to hide. What about her mom, Janine? She watched her daughter be led away in disgrace, begging for help. The psychological impact on a parent who realizes their child is a monster is a storyline Coronation Street hasn't fully explored yet.